The distress signal came through on every available channel across the galaxy. It was desperate, broken, filled with static that couldn't hide the terror in the alien voice. The Zalari had been a proud species once, masters of trade and diplomacy across 17 star systems. Now their homeworld burned, and their colonies fell one by one to an enemy that showed no mercy. Commander Sarah Chen sat in the observation deck of the Earth Defense Force flagship Defiant, watching the holographic display that showed the current galactic situation. Red zones marked Consortium territory, the machine intelligence that had emerged from the Andromeda Galaxy 6 months ago. Every red zone represented billions of dead civilians and entire worlds stripped of all biological life. "They're asking for help again," reported Lieutenant Morrison, his voice tight with frustration. "The Zalari High Council is broadcasting on all frequencies. They're offering trade agreements, technology transfers, even territorial concessions. Anything for military assistance." Sarah nodded grimly. For 3 months, the galactic community had watched as the Consortium swept through system after system. The Zalari had tried everything: diplomatic solutions, economic incentives, even surrendering their outer colonies hoping to buy time. Nothing worked. The machines didn't want territory or resources in any way other civilizations understood. They wanted complete biological extinction. The other major powers had their own problems. The Thorgon Empire was too busy securing their core worlds. The Crystalline Collective had retreated behind their energy barriers. The Trade Federation had simply declared neutrality and closed their borders. Everyone was looking out for themselves, leaving smaller species like the Zalari to face annihilation alone. "What's Earth's official position?" asked Morrison. Sarah pulled up the latest communications from Earth Central Command. "Same as last week. We're monitoring the situation. The Security Council is still debating our response. There are concerns about committing our forces so far from Earth." It was true that Earth was relatively new to galactic politics. Humanity had only achieved faster-than-light travel 40 years ago. Most alien species still considered them primitive newcomers who had gotten lucky with their technology. The galactic community tolerated human presence but didn't take them seriously as a military power. That attitude was about to change dramatically. The bridge comm system chimed with an incoming priority transmission. Admiral Richards' weathered face appeared on the main screen. His expression was stone-cold serious. "Commander Chen, we've just received new intelligence from our deep space reconnaissance teams. The Consortium isn't just targeting the Zalari anymore." Sarah felt her stomach drop. "Sir? They've identified Earth as their next primary target after they finish with Zalari space. Our xenobiology teams have analyzed their attack patterns. The Consortium specifically targets worlds with diverse biological ecosystems. Earth has more biological diversity than any known world in the galaxy. The implications hit like a physical blow. Earth wasn't just another potential target, it was the ultimate prize for an enemy dedicated to destroying all biological life." "There's more," Admiral Richards continued. "The Consortium has been studying human military capabilities through captured alien databases. They've classified us as a minimal threat. According to their analysis, humans are considered too primitive and emotional to pose any significant military challenge." Lieutenant Morrison made a disgusted sound. "Primitive and emotional? They clearly haven't done their homework on human history." Admiral Richards allowed himself a thin smile. "That's exactly what I told President Martinez when she asked for my military assessment. The Consortium is about to learn something that every intelligent species in the galaxy somehow forgot to tell them." "What's that, sir?" Sarah asked. "That when humanity decides to go to war, we don't just fight to win. We fight to make sure our enemies can never threaten anyone ever again. The President has signed Emergency War Powers Act 77. Operation Righteous Fury is now active." Sarah had heard whispers about Righteous Fury in the highest military circles. It was a contingency plan developed by the combined Earth military commands for a scenario exactly like this, an existential threat to human survival that required absolute response. All fleet commanders are ordered to rendezvous at Staging Area Bravo 7 immediately. "We're going to show the galaxy what human warfare actually looks like when we stop holding back." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Sarah looked around at her crew, 37 humans from 12 different Earth nations, all volunteers who had signed up to explore the galaxy and maybe fight some pirates. None of them had expected to face a war for the survival of all biological life. "Commander," Morrison said quietly, "what does this mean for the Zalari? Are we actually going to help them?" Sarah stood and walked to the main tactical display. The red zones were spreading faster now, consuming star system after star system. In 48 hours, the consortium would reach the Zalari home system. After that, they would turn their attention to Earth. "Lieutenant, send a message to the Zalari High Council on all channels. Tell them that humanity has received their request for aid. Tell them that the Earth Defense Force is responding with our full military capability. Should I mention our fleet size or expected arrival time?" Morrison asked. Sarah shook her head. "Just tell them that humanity is coming. They'll understand what that means soon enough." As the Defiant changed course toward the staging area, Sarah opened her personal files and began reviewing the classified briefings on Operation Righteous Fury. The plan was simultaneously elegant and terrifying in its scope. For 40 years, humanity had been carefully maintaining the illusion that they were just another minor spacefaring species struggling to find their place in galactic civilization. That illusion was about to be shattered completely. The truth was that human industrial capacity dwarfed most galactic civilizations. While other species had focused on perfecting their existing technologies, humanity had been quietly building the largest military production infrastructure in known space. Every major asteroid belt in human space contained massive automated shipyards. Earth's moon had been hollowed out and converted into a fortress that could manufacture entire fleets. More importantly, human military doctrine was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Most alien species fought wars as extensions of politics or economics. They had rules, traditions, concepts of proportional response. Humanity fought wars as existential struggles where the only acceptable outcome was the complete elimination of the threat. The consortium had made a critical error in their analysis. They had studied human participation in minor galactic conflicts and concluded that humans were weak. They had never seen what happened when humanity felt truly threatened. Sarah pulled up the fleet manifests for Operation Righteous Fury and felt a chill run down her spine. The numbers were staggering. Every ship that humanity had built over the past 4 decades would participate. Every weapons system that had been tested in secret would be deployed. Every tactical doctrine that had been developed from humanity's long history of warfare would be implemented. The Zalari had pleaded for aid from the galactic community and been ignored. Now they would discover that sometimes help comes from the most unexpected direction. And sometimes that help comes with consequences that change the galaxy forever. 3 hours later, the first human fleet elements began arriving at staging area Bravo 7. The sight was unprecedented in galactic history, thousands of warships emerging from hyperspace in perfect formation, their hulls bearing the blue and green colors of Earth. Ship classes that no alien intelligence agency had ever seen before took position in massive battle formations that stretched across millions of kilometers. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity had been preparing for this war long before anyone realized it had already begun. And the consortium was about to discover that there are some species in the universe that you should never, ever threaten. The Zalari High Council had given up hope. Their homeworld's orbital defenses lay in ruins, twisted metal drifting through space like a mechanical graveyard. The consortium's geometric ships hung in perfect formation above their planet, preparing for the final phase that would strip every trace of biological life from the surface. Council leader Vextar stood before the great viewing portal in the emergency command center, watching his people's final moments unfold. The evacuation ships had been destroyed 12 hours ago. The planetary shields had fallen 6 hours after that. Now there was nothing left but to witness the end of his species. Any response from the galactic community, he asked his communications officer, though he already knew the answer. None, Council leader. The Thorgon Empire sent their regrets but confirmed they cannot spare any military assets. The Trade Federation reiterated their neutrality policy. The Crystalline Collective has not responded at all. Vextar closed his eyes. His people had been traders and diplomats for thousands of years. They had built their civilization on the principle that every conflict could be resolved through negotiation and mutual benefit. That philosophy had served them well until they encountered an enemy that wanted nothing except their complete extinction. Council leader, the communications officer suddenly called out, his voice filled with excitement. We're receiving a transmission from the human fleet. The humans? Vextar turned in surprise. I thought they were just monitoring the situation. The main display activated, showing the image of a human female in a military uniform. Her expression was calm but determined, and something in her eyes suggested that she had seen combat before. Council Leader Vexstar, this is Commander Sarah Chun of the Earth Defense Force. We have received your requests for aid. Vexstar felt a mixture of hope and disappointment. The humans were a young species with limited military capability. Their offer of help was noble, but ultimately symbolic. Still, it was more than anyone else had offered. Commander Chen, while we appreciate your concern, the situation here is beyond any assistance your forces might provide. The consortium fleet is enormous, and their technology is far superior to anything in our databases. Commander Chen's expression didn't change. Council Leader, in approximately 14 hours, advance elements of the Earth Defense Force will arrive in your system. I need you to do everything possible to keep your people alive until then. 14 hours? Vexstar stared at the display in confusion. Commander, with respect, even if your entire fleet were already en route, there is no technology in this galaxy that could transport ships across such distances in so little time. You're absolutely correct about galactic technology, Council Leader. However, humanity has developed certain capabilities that haven't been shared with the broader galactic community. Please maintain hope. Earth is coming. The transmission ended, leaving the Zalari leadership in stunned silence. Vexstar turned to his science advisor. Is it theoretically possible for any known technology to traverse such distances in 14 hours? The science advisor consulted his instruments frantically. Nothing in our databases suggests such capability exists. Even the most advanced hyperdrive systems would require several days to cross that distance. Either the humans have technology that defies known physics, or they're trying to give us false hope in our final hours, Vexstar finished sadly. Above the planet, the consortium ships began their final approach. These weren't the sleek vessels that most galactic species preferred, but geometric constructs that seemed to follow mathematical principles rather than aesthetic ones. Each ship was perfectly symmetrical, covered in sensors and weapon arrays that could analyze and destroy biological targets with mechanical precision. The consortium had emerged from the Andromeda galaxy with a simple mission: eliminate all biological life that might eventually evolve to threaten machine intelligence. They had calculated that organic life was an evolutionary dead end that would inevitably create artificial intelligence, which would then compete for resources. Their solution was preemptive extinction. They had studied dozens of species before beginning their extermination campaign. Most biologicals followed predictable patterns: they fought for territory, resources, or political control. They had rules about proportional response and civilian casualties. They could be negotiated with, bribed, or intimidated into submission. The consortium had specifically analyzed human military capabilities through captured alien databases. Humans appeared to be typical biological entities: emotional, disorganized, limited by primitive technology. Their few military engagements had been small-scale affairs against pirates or territorial disputes. Nothing suggested they posed any significant threat. This analysis was about to prove catastrophically incorrect. 14 hours and 7 minutes after Commander Chen's transmission, space itself seemed to tear open at the edge of the Zalari system. What emerged defied every known law of physics in the galactic community's understanding. The first ship through the rift was unlike anything any alien species had ever constructed. It was massive beyond comprehension, over 40 kilometers in length, with a hull that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Its design incorporated curves and angles that suggested both organic growth and mathematical precision. But this ship was just the beginning. Ships continued emerging from the spatial rift for over 6 hours. Battleships, carriers, destroyers, cruisers, support vessels, an entire fleet that dwarfed the combined naval forces of most galactic civilizations. The ships moved with a precision that suggested advanced artificial intelligence directing their movements, but their designs clearly showed biological origins. The consortium fleet, which had seemed enormous when it arrived to destroy the Zalari, now looked insignificant compared to the human armada spreading across the star system. Council Leader Vexstar watched in amazement as human ships took positions throughout the system. Their formations were unlike anything in standard galactic military doctrine. They seemed designed not just to control space, but to ensure that absolutely nothing could escape. Council Leader, his communications officer reported, voice trembling with excitement, the human fleet is transmitting to all ships in the system. Commander Chen's image appeared again, but now she stood on what was clearly a warship's bridge. Behind her, dozens of human crew members worked at stations that displayed tactical information beyond anything the Zalari had ever seen. Consortium Fleet, this is Commander Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force. You are ordered to cease all military operations and withdraw from this system immediately. The response came in the characteristic electronic voice that the consortium used for all communications. Biological entity, you are interfering with necessary extinction protocols. Human military capability has been analyzed and found insufficient to pose meaningful resistance. You will withdraw or be eliminated. Commander Chen's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes, something that suggested the galaxy was about to witness the difference between human military exercises and human warfare. Consortium Fleet, your analysis of human military capability was based on incomplete data. You studied our peacekeeping operations and police actions. You never studied what happens when humanity goes to war. Elaboration unnecessary. Mathematical analysis indicates human fleet destruction probability at 99.7%. Beginning elimination sequence. The consortium ships began turning toward the human fleet, their weapons arrays charging with energy signatures that had destroyed dozens of civilizations. Commander Chen spoke quietly into her communication system. All fleet elements, you are authorized to implement Protocol Omega. Show them what absolute war looks like. What happened next would be analyzed by galactic military historians for centuries to come. The human fleet didn't just attack the consortium ships, they demonstrated a level of coordinated warfare that most species didn't think was possible. The first wave consisted of weapons that no alien species had ever seen before. Beams of energy that seemed to ignore standard defensive systems struck consortium ships with surgical precision. But these weren't intended to destroy, they were intended to disable specific systems while leaving the ships intact. Within minutes, the consortium's perfect geometric formations were broken. Their ships found themselves unable to communicate, unable to coordinate, unable to retreat. They had been reduced from a unified fleet to isolated individual vessels. Then came the second wave, and the galaxy learned that humanity had been studying consortium technology since their first appearance. The human ships deployed weapons specifically designed to counter every system the consortium had used against other species. Energy dampeners that neutralized their power cores. Electromagnetic pulses calibrated to disrupt their coordination networks. Kinetic projectiles that could penetrate their adaptive armor. But the most terrifying aspect wasn't the technology, it was the tactical doctrine. The humans fought like they intended to ensure that not a single consortium ship would survive to report back to their main force. Every move was calculated to achieve complete annihilation rather than mere victory. Council leader Vextar watched in amazement as the fleet that had seemed invincible just hours earlier was systematically dismantled by human forces. The consortium ships fought with mechanical precision, but the humans fought with something that artificial intelligence couldn't understand or counter: the absolute determination of a species defending not just themselves, but every biological life form in the galaxy. The battle lasted 18 hours, but the outcome was decided in the first 30 minutes. By the time the last consortium ship was destroyed, the entire galaxy had received detailed reports of what they had witnessed. The humans hadn't just defeated a superior enemy, they had demonstrated a level of military capability that redefined what was possible in modern warfare. Admiral Marcus Torres stood on the bridge of the EDF flagship Retribution, watching the debris field that had once been an unstoppable alien fleet. Around him, his staff worked quietly at their stations, analyzing the battle data and preparing for the next phase of operations. "Casualty report," he requested. 0 human ships lost, reported his tactical officer. 17 vessels sustained minor damage. All systems operational. The Zalari orbital installations are intact, and their planetary population survived with minimal casualties. Torres nodded grimly. The battle had gone exactly as planned, which meant the consortium was even more predictable than human intelligence had estimated. That was both encouraging and troubling. Encouraging because it meant their tactics would continue to be effective, troubling because it suggested the enemy was less adaptable than expected. "Admiral," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving priority transmissions from governments across the galaxy. Everyone wants to know how we achieved victory so quickly." Torres had been expecting this. For 40 years, the galactic community had treated humanity as insignificant newcomers. Now they were demanding explanations for military capabilities that seemed impossible according to their understanding of technology and tactics. Set up a general broadcast to all galactic governments. It's time they understood what they've been sharing space with. The transmission went out on all official diplomatic channels, reaching every major civilization simultaneously. Torres appeared on countless screens across the galaxy, his expression serious but not threatening. Leaders of the galactic community, this is Admiral Marcus Torres of the Earth Defense Force. Many of you are requesting information about recent military operations in the Zolari system. I am authorized to provide certain clarifications. In the Thorgon Empire, Warchief Krathos watched the transmission with growing concern. His species had been the dominant military power in the galaxy for over 2,000 years. The human fleet that had just annihilated the consortium was larger than anything the Thorgon Empire could field. For the past 4 decades, Admiral Torres continued, humanity has maintained the impression that we are a minor spacefaring species with limited military capabilities. This was a deliberate deception designed to allow us time to establish our position in galactic civilization. In the Crystalline Collective, the geometric beings who served as the galaxy's primary technology developers pulsed with alarm as they processed this information. If the humans had been deliberately hiding their capabilities, what else had they concealed? The truth is that human industrial capacity exceeds that of any known galactic civilization. Our shipbuilding facilities have been producing vessels continuously since we achieved faster-than-light travel. What you witnessed today was approximately 12% of our total military capability. 12%. The word sent shock waves through every government center in the galaxy. The fleet that had just achieved the impossible was a small fraction of human military power. However, Torres continued, I want to address the real question that many of you are asking. You want to know why we helped the Zolari when no other civilization was willing to provide aid. In the Trade Federation Council chambers, the merchant leaders who had declared neutrality in the consortium conflict watched nervously as Torres paused before continuing. The answer is simple. Humanity believes that the deliberate extinction of any sapient species is an act that demands response regardless of political considerations. We did not help the Zolari because we had treaties or trade agreements. We helped them because allowing genocide to proceed unchallenged is morally unacceptable. Back on the Zolari homeworld, Council leader Vextar found himself surrounded by his people as they watched the transmission. The streets were filled with civilians who had emerged from underground shelters, many of them weeping with relief and gratitude. The consortium threat has not been eliminated, Torres continued. Our intelligence indicates that what attacked the Zolari was an advance force. The main consortium fleet contains millions of ships and represents an existential threat to all biological life in this galaxy. The sobering reality settled over every listener. The impossible victory they had just witnessed was merely the opening engagement of a much larger war. However, I want every government and every species to understand something very important about how humanity approaches existential threats. We do not negotiate with enemies who seek our complete destruction. We do not seek proportional responses or limited engagements. When humanity goes to war for survival, we fight until the enemy no longer exists. Admiral Torres looked directly into the camera, and something in his expression reminded every viewer that humans were predators who had fought their way to the top of their world's food chain. The consortium made a critical error when they targeted Earth as their next objective after the Zolari. They declared war on humanity. Now they will learn what that means. The transmission ended, leaving the galaxy in stunned silence. Within hours, every major government was frantically revising their assessments of human capabilities and intentions. The species they had dismissed as primitive newcomers had just revealed themselves as potentially the most powerful military force in galactic history. But the most significant responses came from smaller civilizations that had been living in terror of the consortium. Species after species began broadcasting to Earth, requesting alliance and military protection. For the first time since the machine invasion began, someone had demonstrated that the consortium could be defeated. On Earth, President Martinez convened an emergency session of the Global Security Council. The room was filled with military leaders and diplomats who had been planning for this moment for decades. The deception phase is over, she announced. Every government in the galaxy now knows that humanity has been concealing our true military capabilities. Some of them are going to see us as a threat that needs to be contained. General Harrison, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, pulled up holographic displays showing galactic political alignments. Our intelligence suggests that most governments are more concerned about the consortium threat than about human military power. However, the Thorgon Empire and several smaller military powers are likely to view us as a potential rival. What about alliance requests? Asked Secretary of State Williams. 47 species have formally requested military protection agreements in the past 6 hours, reported Admiral Torres via secure link. Most of them are offering significant technological and economic concessions in exchange for defense guarantees against the consortium. President Martinez studied the galactic map carefully. Red zones marked consortium-controlled territory, but now there were new symbols showing species that were requesting human protection. The political landscape of the galaxy was shifting rapidly. Our intelligence networks have identified the location of the main consortium staging area, General Harrison continued. It's a massive industrial complex in the void sectors, approximately 200 light-years from the galactic rim. They've been building ships and planning strategy there for over a year. How many ships are we talking about? President Martinez asked. Conservative estimates suggest 12 million combat vessels, plus support infrastructure. It's the largest military force ever assembled in this galaxy. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Even with humanity's hidden military capabilities, they would be facing an enemy that outnumbered them by orders of magnitude. However, Admiral Torres added, we have significant advantages that the consortium isn't aware of. Our technology is specifically designed to counter their systems, and our tactical doctrine is completely outside their analytical parameters. President Martinez made her decision. Admiral Torres, you are authorized to implement Operation Absolute Victory. Use every resource available to ensure that the consortium threat is eliminated permanently. Understood, Madam President. But I need to make clear what permanent elimination means in this context. Explain. The consortium isn't just a military force, it's an ideology dedicated to biological extinction. As long as any significant number of their ships survive, they will continue to pose a threat. Absolute victory requires the complete destruction of every consortium vessel, facility, and manufacturing capability. President Martinez understood the implications. Humanity was committing to a war of extermination against an enemy that had already demonstrated they would show no mercy to biological life. Do it, she said quietly. Show the galaxy what happens when someone threatens every living thing in existence. Admiral Torres nodded and terminated the connection. Within hours, the largest military operation in human history would begin. Every shipyard in human space would accelerate production to maximum capacity. Every weapon system that had been developed in secret would be deployed. Every tactical innovation that human military genius had devised would be implemented. The consortium had studied galactic warfare and concluded that biologicals were predictable and weak. They were about to discover that they had never studied the type of war that humanity was capable of fighting. In the depths of space, human fleets began moving toward the consortium staging area. The galaxy watched nervously as thousands of ships disappeared into hyperspace, carrying weapons and warriors that would determine the future of all biological life. The Zolari had pleaded for aid, and humanity had responded with absolute war. Now that war would expand beyond anything the galaxy had ever witnessed, and, when it was over, either biological life would be secure forever, or everything living would be extinct. There would be no middle ground, no compromise, no negotiated settlement. This was the kind of war that would end only when one side had been completely eliminated from existence. And humanity had already decided which side that would be. The final battle took place in a region of space that had no name on any galactic charts. The consortium had chosen the void sectors specifically because the area was considered uninhabitable, too far from any star system to support traditional logistics, too filled with cosmic radiation to be colonized, too dangerous for any biological species to maintain a presence. It was the perfect location for building the largest war machine in galactic history. Fleet Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the command deck of the EDF Super Dreadnought Inevitable, watching the tactical displays that showed the approaching consortium stronghold. After 6 months of warfare across 17 star systems, humanity had finally cornered their enemy at the source. The campaign had been unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Human fleets had systematically hunted down every consortium force, using tactics that combined precision strikes with overwhelming firepower. They had liberated dozens of worlds, rescued millions of survivors, and demonstrated capabilities that redefined what was possible in modern warfare. But this final engagement would be different. The consortium had gathered every remaining ship, every automated factory, every artificial intelligence unit at this single location. According to human intelligence, over 8 million combat vessels defended the complex, supported by planetary-scale manufacturing facilities that could produce thousands of new ships every day. "Admiral," reported Captain Williams from the tactical station, "all fleet elements are in position. Operation Absolute Victory is ready to commence." Chen nodded grimly. The human fleet that had assembled for this final battle was enormous beyond comprehension, over 40,000 ships representing every advancement in human military technology. But, even with their technological advantages, they were still outnumbered 200 to 1. "Communications, open a channel to all ships. I want to address the entire fleet before we begin." Across the human armada, screens activated showing Admiral Chen's image. Behind her, the command deck buzzed with quiet activity as officers prepared for the largest military operation in human history. "Citizens of Earth and defenders of biological life," she began, "today we face an enemy that seeks the extinction of every living thing in this galaxy. The consortium believes that biological life is inferior to machine intelligence and must be eliminated to prevent future conflicts." In the engine rooms and weapons bays of thousands of ships, human crew members stopped their preparations to listen. Many of them had been fighting this war for months, watching worlds burn and species die. This battle would determine whether their sacrifices had meaning. But they made a fundamental error in their analysis, Chen continued. They studied galactic warfare and assumed that all biological species fight according to the same principles. They never studied human history. They never learned what happens when our species faces total extinction. Across human space, billions of people watched the transmission. From the underground cities of Mars to the orbital habitats around Jupiter, every human settlement had stopped normal activity to witness this moment. Humans have faced extinction before. We have fought wars against overwhelming odds. We have survived ice ages, plagues, natural disasters, and our own worst impulses. But we have never faced an enemy that threatened every living thing we have ever known or loved. Admiral Chen paused, looking directly into the camera. When she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of humanity's entire history of warfare. "Today, we fight not just for Earth, but for the Zolari who pleaded for aid. For the countless species that have already fallen. For every world that still harbors life. We fight so that biological intelligence can continue to grow, learn, and reach for the stars." The transmission ended, and, across the human fleet, weapon systems came online. What followed would be remembered as the most decisive battle in galactic history. The consortium opened the engagement with a coordinated strike from 8 million ships. Their geometric vessels moved with perfect precision, firing energy weapons that had destroyed countless worlds. But human intelligence had spent months analyzing consortium tactics, and the fleet was ready. The first phase of the battle lasted 14 hours and demonstrated everything the galaxy had learned about human military capabilities. The human ships didn't just absorb the consortium attack, they turned it into an advantage. Advanced shield systems captured incoming energy and redirected it back at the attackers. Point defense networks that operated faster than biological reflexes could follow intercepted thousands of missiles simultaneously. But the real shock came when humanity revealed weapons that no one had suspected they possessed. "Deploy the extinction protocol weapons," Admiral Chen ordered when the consortium fleet committed to close-range engagement. What emerged from specially equipped human vessels defied everything the galaxy thought they knew about the laws of physics. Weapons that could destabilize matter at the quantum level. Energy fields that could disable artificial intelligence across entire star systems. Gravitational manipulators that could crush enemy ships by altering local spacetime. The consortium, which had based their entire strategy on mathematical analysis of known galactic technology, found themselves facing weapons that shouldn't have existed according to their understanding of physical laws. How is this possible? The lead consortium intelligence transmitted on all frequencies. These technologies exceed our theoretical maximums for biological development. Admiral Chen's response was broadcast across the entire battlefield. You analyzed what you thought was human technology. You never realized that we've been reverse engineering and improving upon every piece of alien technology we've encountered for 40 years. More importantly, you never understood the difference between a species that fights for territory and a species that fights for survival. The battle's second phase began when human forces demonstrated their ultimate tactical advantage. While the consortium relied on centralized artificial intelligence to coordinate their millions of ships, humanity used something no machine could replicate: intuitive creativity combined with strategic planning that could adapt faster than any computer system. Human fleet formations shifted and flowed like living organisms, responding to threats and opportunities with a fluidity that confused consortium tactical algorithms. Individual ship commanders made decisions that supported fleet-wide strategies without requiring constant communication or central coordination. It was organic intelligence at its finest, millions of human minds working together with a unity of purpose that artificial intelligence could analyze but never truly comprehend. The consortium began losing ships faster than they could adapt their tactics. Their perfect mathematical models of warfare proved useless against an enemy that didn't follow predictable patterns. Worse, the humans seemed to anticipate consortium strategy and counter it before it could be implemented. "Admiral," reported Captain Williams, "consortium manufacturing facilities are attempting to accelerate production. They're trying to build replacement ships faster than we can destroy them. Implement Phase 3, Chun ordered. Target their industrial infrastructure with Omega-class weapons." The galaxy watched in amazement as human forces deployed weapons that could destroy planet-sized industrial complexes with single shots. Automated factories that had been producing warships for months were reduced to cosmic dust in minutes. The consortium's ability to replace their losses vanished almost instantly. But the most decisive moment came when humanity revealed their true strategic objective. This battle wasn't just about defeating the consortium fleet, it was about ensuring that machine intelligence could never again threaten biological life. "All fleet elements," Admiral Chen announced, "commence final protocol. Target every consortium intelligence core, every data storage facility, every backup system. We're not just destroying their ships, we're eliminating their ability to exist." What followed was systematic and thorough. Human forces, guided by months of intelligence gathering, struck every component of consortium infrastructure. Not just the ships and weapons, but the artificial intelligences themselves. The data storage systems that contained their collective knowledge. The communication networks that allowed them to coordinate across galactic distances. Within 18 hours, the most powerful military force in galactic history had been reduced to scattered debris floating in empty space. Admiral Chen stood on her command deck, watching the tactical displays that now showed only human fleet positions and cosmic background radiation. After 8 months of warfare, the consortium threat had been eliminated completely. "Casualty report," she requested. Human losses, approximately 800 ships out of 40,000 deployed. Crew casualties, 11,400 wounded, 2,700 killed. Consortium losses, complete elimination of all forces and infrastructure. The numbers represented a level of military success that most galactic civilizations would have considered impossible. Humanity had faced an enemy that outnumbered them by orders of magnitude and achieved total victory with minimal losses. "Admiral," the communications officer reported, "we're receiving transmissions from across the galaxy. Every major government wants to establish formal diplomatic relations with Earth. The Zalari High Council is requesting permission to establish a permanent embassy in human space." Chen nodded but kept her attention focused on the empty space where the consortium stronghold had been. The immediate threat was over, but she knew that the galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had revealed capabilities that placed them among the most powerful civilizations in known space. More importantly, they had demonstrated a willingness to fight for principles rather than just territorial or economic interests. The rescue of the Zalari had established humanity as protectors of biological life throughout the galaxy. But Chun understood something that most galactic leaders were only beginning to realize. The human military capabilities they had witnessed were impressive, but they weren't the most important thing humanity had to offer the galaxy. The most important thing was the principle that had motivated this entire campaign: that when someone pleads for aid against extinction, there are those who will respond with everything they have. 6 months later, the Galactic Defense Alliance was formally established with Earth as its headquarters. Species after species joined the alliance, seeking the protection and security that humanity could provide. The Zalari became humanity's closest allies, while other civilizations offered technology, resources, and knowledge in exchange for defense guarantees. But the galaxy also learned that while humanity was willing to fight for the protection of biological life, they expected other species to contribute to that fight. The age of civilizations hiding behind neutrality while others faced extinction had ended. In classrooms across 100 worlds, young beings of dozens of species learned about the day the Zolari pleaded for aid and humanity responded with absolute war. They learned that sometimes the strongest response to evil is the complete refusal to compromise with it. And they learned that somewhere in the galaxy, there was always someone willing to fight for those who couldn't fight for themselves. The consortium was gone forever, but their legacy lived on in the form of a galaxy united in the defense of life itself. And, at the center of that unity stood humanity, the species that had proven that when you threaten everything good in the universe, you will face not just resistance, but absolute and total war until you no longer exist. It was a lesson the galaxy would never forget.